That is exactly what happened when Savannah Guthrie disappeared from the Today Show. No warning, no goodbye, just silence, and then the rumors started. Was she fired? Was she sick? Had something happened behind closed doors at NBC that the network didn't want the public to know about? Social media exploded. Fans who had grown up watching Savannah, who had cried with her during breaking news, who had laughed with her every single morning over their coffee, were scared. They were confused, and they deserved answers. But NBC stayed quiet. For days, the speculation grew louder. The headlines got darker, and Savannah Guthrie, one of the most trusted faces in American morning television, was nowhere to be found. What was really going on behind the scenes at one of the most powerful morning shows in the world? What did NBC know that they weren't telling us? And most importantly, what does this mean for the woman who gave everything she had to that anchor desk? Stay with us, because this story is far deeper, far more emotional, and far more human than any headline ever told you. To understand why Savannah Guthrie's absence shook America the way it did, you first have to understand what Savannah means to people. She is not just a news anchor. She is not just a face on a screen. For millions of Americans, Savannah Guthrie is the voice that greets them before the rest of the world wakes up. She is the steady presence in a chaotic world. She is the woman who sat across from presidents, broke down the most complex stories in American politics, and still somehow made you feel like you were sitting in a kitchen, having coffee with a trusted friend. That is a rare gift, and Savannah has carried it for over a decade. She joined the Today Show in 2011, first as a co-anchor alongside Ann Curry, when Ann's painful and very public departure shook the program to its core. Savannah stepped into one of the most scrutinized seats in all of television. She didn't just fill that chair. She transformed it. Alongside Matt Lauer and later Hoda Kotb, she helped rebuild the morning show into something warm, honest, and deeply human. She anchored presidential debates. She covered historic elections. She interviewed world leaders and Hollywood legends with the same effortless, disarming grace, and she did it all while the world watched her build a life in real time. She married attorney Mike Feldman in 2014. She welcomed her daughter Vale and her son Charlie while still anchoring the show. She talked about her faith openly and without apology. She shared her struggles and her joy without pretense or performance. America didn't just watch Savannah Guthrie. America grew up alongside her. So when that chair became empty, when her voice was no longer there at 7 in the morning, it felt personal. It felt like a loss that nobody had prepared for. It felt like something was being hidden from the very audience that had given her their trust, their mornings, and their loyalty for years. The silence from the network was deafening. And that silence made everything worse. Savannah Clark Guthrie was born on December 27, 1971, in Melbourne, Australia, while her American family was living abroad. She grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and later in Roanoke, Virginia, a childhood defined by movement, curiosity, and a deep, early love of words. Her father, Charles Guthrie, passed away when Savannah was just 16 years old. That loss hit the teenage girl in ways that took years to fully process. Losing a parent at that age, right in the moment when you are still figuring out who you are and what you believe, leaves a mark that never fully disappears. It changes the way you see time, the way you hold on to people, the way you understand that nothing is permanent. It shaped her profoundly. It taught her early that life could be fragile, that the moments you take for granted can vanish before you realize how deeply they mattered. Savannah threw herself into education with a focus that many of her peers couldn't match. She graduated from the University of Arizona with a degree in journalism. But she didn't stop there. She went on to earn a law degree from Georgetown University Law Center, becoming a fully licensed attorney, a credential that would prove to be one of the most powerful and unexpected tools in her entire professional arsenal. Think about that for a moment. A woman who could have chosen the security of law, the predictability of a courtroom career, instead chose the unpredictable, demanding, deeply personal world of television journalism. That choice wasn't impulsive. It wasn't reckless. It was intentional. Because Savannah Guthrie didn't just want to report the news. She wanted to understand it at its deepest level. She wanted to hold power accountable, to ask the questions other journalists were afraid to ask, and to do it with both intellectual precision and genuine human warmth. That combination, the lawyer's sharp mind living inside the journalist's open heart, would eventually make her one of the most formidable broadcast anchors this country has ever produced. But the road there was long, and it was far from a straight line. Before the Today Show, before the presidential debates, before the entire country knew her name, Savannah Guthrie was grinding in the trenches like every journalist before her. She worked at local news stations in Arizona, paying her dues the way the industry demands: long hours, small markets, stories that would never make a national headline. She did it anyway. She showed up every single day, without exception. Her talent was impossible to ignore, and it wasn't long before bigger opportunities came looking for her. She joined NBC News as a correspondent and quickly made her mark covering legal stories, a natural fit for someone with her background. Her reporting was sharp and confident. Her presence on camera was commanding without being cold, and her rare ability to translate complicated legal matters into plain, emotional, human language set her apart from almost everyone else in the field. In 2008, she became NBC News White House correspondent, covering the final months of the George W. Bush administration and the historic, world-changing election of Barack Obama, standing on the White House lawn, reporting history as it unfolded in real time. That was the moment a much wider audience first truly noticed Savannah Guthrie. By 2011, she was co-anchoring the Today Show, and by 2012, after Curry's deeply painful departure from the program, Savannah stepped fully into the lead anchor role. The pressure that came with that position was unlike anything she had faced before. Morning television is brutal in ways that most viewers never see. The ratings are everything. The audience is loyal but deeply unforgiving. And when a show is struggling to find its footing, the anchors are always the first to feel the heat, and sometimes the first to take the blame. But Savannah Guthrie didn't crack under that pressure. She leaned directly into it. She brought genuine depth to what many critics had long dismissed as light, disposable entertainment. She made the Today Show feel like a place where real conversations could happen, where breaking news and human stories could live side by side without one cheapening the other. She co-moderated a presidential primary debate in 2016. She became one of the most trusted and feared political interviewers in the entire business. She was the anchor who could make a sitting senator sweat with a single, perfectly timed follow-up question, and then turn around 2 minutes later and laugh about Halloween costumes with her co-hosts. That kind of range is almost impossible to sustain. Savannah made it look completely natural, but no career built in the full glare of the spotlight survives without collecting its share of scars. In 2017, Savannah Guthrie faced what may have been the single most difficult moment of her entire professional life. Her longtime co-anchor Matt Lauer was fired from NBC following serious and disturbing allegations of sexual misconduct. It was a seismic, industry-shaking moment, one that nobody at the network had truly prepared for, and Savannah had to announce it live, on air, to millions of viewers who had absolutely no idea what was coming. She sat at that desk, her composure barely holding, her voice tight with an emotion she could not fully hide, and she read the words out loud. She was honest, she was measured, and she was visibly heartbroken in a way that no amount of professional training could conceal. Very few people fully understood the weight she was carrying in that moment. She had worked alongside Matt Lauer for years. She had called him a colleague, a partner, a friend, and in an instant, everything she thought she understood about her professional life was upended without warning. She had to carry the show forward in the wake of a scandal that rocked NBC to its very foundation and left the entire morning television landscape permanently changed. She did it. She kept going, but it cost her something real, something that doesn't simply disappear once the cameras stop rolling. There were also quieter, more private struggles, ones she has spoken about with a level of openness that most public figures never allow themselves. In 2016, she discovered she was rapidly losing vision in one eye, later confirmed to be the result of a detached retina. There followed a terrifying period of genuine uncertainty about whether she would fully recover, whether she would be able to see clearly again. Imagine living inside that fear. A journalist, someone whose entire professional identity depends on being present, sharp, and fully engaged, facing the very real possibility of permanent vision loss. She had surgery. She recovered. But the memory of that fear, the fragility it revealed, never entirely left her. And then there were the personal costs of relentless ambition that never make the headlines. The missed bedtimes, the exhaustion of waking at 4 in the morning, day after day, year after year, with a smile ready for the camera, the invisible weight of being a mother, a wife, a public figure, and a journalist all at once, with the world watching every moment. Savannah Guthrie has never once pretended that any of it was easy, and that refusal to perform strength she didn't feel is a large part of why people love her, as deeply as they do, behind the anchor desk, behind the carefully composed television persona that America watches every morning. Savannah Guthrie is, above everything else, a mother and a woman of deep, unshakable faith. She married Michael Feldman, a political consultant and communications strategist. In 2014, their relationship has always carried a quiet, grounded quality that is genuinely rare and difficult to maintain when one partner lives their life under constant public scrutiny. Mike is not a television personality. He does not seek the spotlight. He has never needed it. And that steadiness, that private, unassuming presence, has clearly been one of the most important anchors in Savannah's life. They have 2 children together. Vale, born in 2014, Charlie, born in 2016. Savannah has spoken about her children with a tenderness and vulnerability that cuts straight through every layer of professional armor she wears on screen. She talks about wanting to be present for them, about the quiet guilt of the pre-dawn mornings, the long days that bleed into evenings, the ordinary moments she missed because the camera was waiting, about trying to honestly reconcile the crushing demands of one of television's highest pressure jobs with the simple, irreplaceable experience of just being there when your child looks up and needs to find your face. She is also openly and genuinely Christian in a way that feels entirely unperformed. Her faith is not a talking point. It is not a brand strategy. It is a real, private, daily source of strength that she has drawn from in moments of professional crisis, personal grief, and physical fear when she faced the possibility of losing her vision. It was her faith, alongside her family, that held her upright. And when she has spoken publicly about the moments of quiet doubt and deep exhaustion that inevitably come with years at the very top of a demanding, unforgiving industry, you can hear it clearly in her voice. Not bitterness, not resentment, not regret. Just the honest, earned reflection of a woman who has given far more than most people will ever fully understand. There comes a moment in every long career when the industry begins to look at you with different eyes. Savannah Guthrie has spent well over a decade at the absolute top of morning television. She has watched colleagues rise with great fanfare and quietly disappear. She has survived network scandals, dramatic format changes, multiple shifts in NBC leadership, and a global pandemic that forced her to anchor the show from her living room, while managing 2 young children in the background and keeping her own fear carefully off camera. She kept going. She always kept going. But the question that hung in the air, the question that became impossible to push aside when she disappeared from the Today Show, was this: how much longer can any human being sustain a pace like this? And what happens to a morning television anchor when the network quietly begins to weigh the value of the future against the weight of the past? These are not cruel questions. They are honest ones. And in the television industry, honest questions can be the most frightening kind. Because television is a relentless and largely unsentimental machine. It builds careers with extraordinary speed and then moves on without ceremony. The very same networks that invest in creating iconic faces can, and do, dismantle those same careers behind closed boardroom doors, with carefully worded press releases designed to say everything and reveal absolutely nothing. Savannah Guthrie is not a naive woman. She has been inside this industry long enough to understand precisely how it works. She has seen it happen to others. She has reported on the fallout when it happens to people she knew, and yet, there was something about her absence that felt genuinely different. Something that felt less like a cold corporate calculation and far more like a human being, who had finally, quietly, desperately needed to stop and breathe. So here is what we actually know. NBC did eventually address Savannah Guthrie's status on the Today Show. And the truth, as it so reliably tends to be, was more complicated, more human, and more emotionally layered than the rumor mill had ever allowed. For Savannah's absence was connected to a combination of factors that NBC had chosen to manage, carefully and quietly rather than loudly and transparently. There were contract discussions happening, the kind of high-stakes, closely guarded negotiations that unfold behind closed doors at every major network when a long-running anchor's future is genuinely on the table. There were questions about the direction of the show itself, about format evolution, about what role Savannah would play as morning television continued to change around her, and there was something more personal running underneath all of it. Savannah had been quietly carrying the accumulated weight of years of relentless pressure. The physical toll of pre-dawn mornings stretched across more than a decade. The emotional cost of everything she had been asked to carry, the scandals she had reported through, the health scares she had survived, the constant, grinding effort of balancing the demands of national fame with the deeply private needs of family and faith. NBC's eventual statement acknowledged her immense contributions. It addressed the transition carefully. It left the future deliberately open, written in the careful, considered, diplomatic language that networks reach for when they want to manage a narrative without fully surrendering control of it. But what that statement could not fully capture, what no official press release ever genuinely can, was the full truth of the human being behind the story. Savannah Guthrie gave the Today Show some of the best, most alive years of her life. She showed up even when it was hard. She told the truth even when it was uncomfortable. She brought real emotion and genuine intellectual honesty to a format that too often settles for neither. Whatever comes next for her, that legacy is not in question. It is already written permanently into the history of American morning television. There's a particular, quiet kind of courage required to do what Savannah Guthrie has done, not the dramatic, headline-generating courage of a single defining moment that the world can point to and celebrate, but the steady, invisible, daily courage of simply showing up, of being present when presence is hard, of caring deeply and consistently about your work even when the industry around you is constantly reminding you that nothing, not fame, not loyalty, not legacy, lasts forever. Savannah Guthrie stood in front of America every single morning for more than a decade and made an implicit, unspoken promise to every person watching: I am here. You can trust me. I will tell you the truth. That promise is not a small thing, and it is not easily replaced. The story of Savannah Guthrie is not simply the story of a television anchor navigating a career transition. It is the story of what happens when genuine talent meets relentless tenacity. When a girl from Arizona, carrying a broken heart and an unlikely law degree, decides to bet everything on herself and wins in ways she never could have predicted. It is the story of a woman who faced grief early and learned to carry it, who faced fear, real, physical, life-altering fear, and refused to let it define her, who faced the kind of sustained, merciless public scrutiny that quietly dismantles most people, and who chose, every single time, without exception, to keep moving forward. Fame is fragile. Platforms shift. Networks evolve and reorganize and rebrand. But the impact a person leaves on the lives of millions of ordinary viewers, the way she made you feel a little less alone on a difficult Tuesday morning when the world felt too heavy to carry, that kind of impact does not simply disappear. It lives on in the people it touch. And wherever Savannah Guthrie goes from here, whatever the next chapter of her remarkable life looks like, she carries with her something that no contract negotiation, no ratings meeting, and no network decision can ever diminish or take away. She carries the trust of the people who watched her, who woke up with her, who grieved and celebrated and wondered alongside her through the best and hardest years of their own lives. That is a legacy that belongs entirely and permanently to her. And it is more than enough.